Yeah, don't stand up if your eyes are blue. My eyes are blue. I saw a picture of that kid, and I still can't remember his last name. I was going to write it down for you.
Shut up.
Ben, you were busy. Okay, so the first period class, they're kind of like, we might get this by Thursday, okay? In fact, some Thursday, real Friday. They're all kind of complaining about maybe a test on Monday. Whatever, we'll see what happens. You guys might even, maybe some of you today are like, I got this. I can do this right now. I can do it, right? But whatever it is, we'll talk. And I told them, you guys, I'm not gonna, like, if you guys are not ready, I'll give them the test on Thursday, Friday. You could be Friday, Monday. If you're really behind, you could do Monday, Tuesday, right? Okay, I don't know. It's just kind of like feeling it out. Okay, it's not like you're going to go and say like, hey, what was on the test? I'll give you all the answers to the test right now. Flexion, extension, hyperextension, right? You know, it's not like you could cheat like in between classes on this test, right? You either know or you don't, right? Okay, so we'll just talk. We'll see how it goes. Everybody loose? Ready? Here we go. Repeat after me. Flexion. Extension. Hyperextension. Elevation. Depression. Protraction. Retraction. Elevation. Depression. Abduction. ABD. Abduction. ADD. Rotation. Rotation. Circumduction. Something else later. Okay. By the way, my 7th period class has all their things signed. You guys have 11, what 12? Okay, so I need like a few more. Or if you're not, like you can tell them. Okay. Are we all good then?
My mom said she.
Everybody's good? All right, here we go. Circumduction, circumcision, chop, chop. That's not a thing, by the way. It's just a joke on my part because circumduction and circumcision sounds funny. You go like this and then you go chop, right? I did witness my son's circumcision. It's awesome. And he cried. It's a good thing you can't remember it. That would be a bummer, right? So I did keep, I kept the foreskin. I'll show you later. Okay, I asked the doctor if I could keep it. Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait till he's in high school. I was like, all right, everybody, this is Linus's foreskin, right? But we'll talk more later about that. Okay, yes. Okay, it's the covering on the
Of the penis. Covering the skin that goes over the head of the penis.
I'll explain later.
It means when you get it cut off, you're circumcised.
Yeah.
If you cut that off.
Yeah, not the actual. By the way, I went. Okay, so like when kids go to college, and we do this. They're going through all this stuff. Like kids who take first year anatomy. One year I had one of my students like stay after class and ask the professor like, "Hey, here's circumduction." They're like, "Why didn't you teach us like circumcision?" And the prof was like, "Where did you hear that?" Like, my anatomy teacher did that in high school. He's like, "Your anatomy teacher's messed up. That's not so you're not." Yes.
Are you gonna show us what uncircumcised wee-wee looks like?
Yeah, we'll talk.
We don't know what it.
Yeah,
No, I don't know even that people don't know what it is or what it looks like.
Yeah, we'll go into all that stuff later. Okay. All right. Okay. Here we go. You ready?
Because it's common sense.
Well, you could Google it. Not at school.
Well, you see, I have 3 nephews.
There's more people that are not getting. It used to be like everyone just got circumcised.
Yeah.
Now,
Parents can choose if
Yeah.
they religion.
yeah, or just like like some people think like it's abusive, like I don't know. We debated with our kids. Do we do it? We do not do it, and we just said, well, let's just.
Why do you want to do it?
We'll talk more about it
It's
later.
timing.
Yeah. There's a really interesting. Before we go on, I will tell you this interesting study. There are more men in Africa that are now in their 30s and 40s getting circumcised, which is, sounds really painful, but it's because it lowers your chance of getting certain infectious diseases, especially AIDS. They did a really interesting study with circumcised men and uncircumcised men in Africa, and the rate of AIDS was like through the roof. And they've now looked at rates dropping because of that circumcision, which is really interesting. There's a little more maintenance here. You have to, stuff gets trapped in there and whatnot. Okay, all right, so where were we? Okay, all right, here we go. Let's put our feet in, but you don't do this, but I'm just doing that to show you. So inversion, eversion, inversion, eversion, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. Okay, good. Superior, inferior, anterior, ventral, dorsal, posterior. Okay, let's do it like this. Anterior, posterior, ventral, dorsal. Yes.
So when we like had the right like the terms down, I didn't quite understand the difference between anterior and
Yep, same thing. It's the same place, but here's how I will tell you. On the test, I will say number 21 starts with an A, 22 starts with a P, 23 starts with a V. It's the same place. So it's just a different way to say it. For, like, because when you can look at the posterior, like if I'm looking at my kidneys posteriorly, it would mean I'm like, I chop off my back and I'm looking at them here. If I'm looking at my kidneys anteriorly, I would remove all of this stuff, right? And then look at them there. But then if I'm referring to like some sort of like fish, so the posterior might be like the end of the fish, right? So here's the fish, right? And here's the tail, here's the dorsal fin. I could refer to posterior here, okay, but this would be like the anterior.
So it's like different regions, essentially?
Yeah, right. I mean, kind of. Yeah, because on me, dorsal would be here. Okay, yeah. Okay, all right. So, medial. Sorry, medial, lateral, medial, lateral, transverse cut, sagittal cut, coronal cut. Okay, let's play a little Jaden says. Ready? Okay, right. James says flexion. James says extension. James says flexion. James says extension. James says hyperextension. Elevation. Ooh, nice. You're out. So
I'm out?
No. Sorry.
Oh.
Okay, James says elevation. James says depression. Protraction. James says protraction. James says retraction. James says pronation. Supination. Ooh, out. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Okay, all right, here we go. James says pronation. James says supination. Elevation. Ooh, that's pretty good. James says elevation. James says depression. James says rotation. James says rotation. Circumduction. Ooh, out.
No,
Yes. So you know. Okay. James says inversion. James says eversion. James says plantar flexion. James says dorsiflexion. James says relax. Elevation. Ooh, nice. James says elevation. James says depression. James says rotation. James says circumduction. Okay. James says relax. James says flexion. Extension. Ooh, James says flexion. James says extension. James says hyperextension. James says relax. ABD. James says ABD. James says ADD. James says rotation. James says relax. Elevation. Ooh, you guys are real good today. James says depression. James says inversion. Eversion. Ooh, you guys are good. James says superior. James says inferior. James says anterior. Posterior. Ooh, nice. James says anterior. James says posterior. James says medial. Lateral. Dang, you're all too good. Sit down. That's amazing. It's amazing. All right. Okay. All right. So here's what I want you to do. Grace is finally going to be able to use her pencils today. We're going to start some today called my talks. Okay. I will tell you. Okay. My talks. I did not get to see it though. I know. Forgive me. This week it was crazy, but I want to. All right. So if you want to take notes on this, you don't have to take notes. But I'm going to ask those people who are sticking with me and writing some stuff down in their notebook to draw some pictures. Okay.
Yay.
Okay. And so we're just kind of moving on. You're like, how can we move on? Okay, this is just how it goes. We're going to practice still through the test of flexion extension. But I'm not going to beat it into your head to the point where we're just doing only that. Okay, so the next section here is my types of tissue, which are TOPS. Okay, this is not the presentation. This is going to be the quiz. Okay, but the quiz doesn't have words on the top, and I will give you all these things. But what I'm going to ask you to do is kind of draw certain characteristics, small sketches, if you will. Okay, and I'll help you understand what that's going to look like. Okay, but the test will be 19 types of tissue. Okay, you will have to write words like simple squamous. Yes, there's not going to be a word bank. You have to write adipose, stratified squamous, so on and so forth. And it's going to seem like, oh gosh, this is horrible. Okay, once again, I think some of this early stuff is just as easy as flexion extension. Okay, I think you're going to be able to get your tots down quite easily. But what I will do is I'm going to like take these pictures in the next presentation, and I'm going to just, I call this my poor man smartboard, right? So I'm going to draw, okay, what I want you to sketch into your notes, okay? So you'll kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like. Y'all with me on this?
Yeah.
Okay? And, you know, one of these things, again, I'm not going to force you to take notes or anything like that, but like, if you're not, and then later you're like, man, I should probably write this different. We'll figure that out. You figure you out. Just as long as you're sticking with me, that's all that matters. Okay, whenever I think about tots, I think of this movie, which is Napoleon Dynamite. Okay, and here we go. This is the tots scene.
I remember boys used to do that all the time.
Come on, give me some of your tots. Come on, go find your own. Come on, give some of your tots. Come on, if you can stop it, you don't get to eat anything to do.
Oh.
Gross. Oh, you idiot.
Good stuff. If you've never seen Napoleon Dynamite, I highly recommend.
My mom thinks
It was like, I saw it in the theaters. It was like such a popular.
that's how my old pastor met his wife.
At Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah.
No way, that's really funny.
It was a church youth.
Where is that? Why is this doing this to me? Why? Okay, good. Here we go. How do I turn? I need to turn autoplay off. I can't stand the autoplay. All right, there we go. All right, now let's go back here to the this, and I'm gonna go to this, and I'm gonna go up here to this, and I'm gonna go here, and this is what we got. All right, once again, I'm gonna give you this presentation. Okay, so I'll tell you what I want you to jot down as we go on. Okay, there's only 4 types of tissue. Okay, but there's lots of subtypes. Okay, so our 4 types: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve. Okay, and when we're looking at these types, okay, you're like, oh man, you said that the test is going to be 20. There's only 4 types. Okay, there's a bunch of epithelials. We're going to start with epithelial because that's the big one. Okay, that's also kind of the simplest one as well. It's less complex, okay, than some of the other ones, but it's really cool. When I talked about the cells in your mouth and the cells in your rectum, okay, those are the same type of cells, right? So when you look at those cells, those are the epithelial ones. Connective tissue, okay, bone, cartilage, that kind of stuff. There's several connective tissues, okay, but there's only 3 muscles. That's smooth, cardiac, and skeletal, and nerve tissue is just plain old nerve tissue. Okay, so these are types of tissues, and we're going to focus on this. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one, and then you'll have to draw a picture. Again, I don't want you to write all this stuff down, okay, but we're going to get to this, and specifically to this, and this is what I want to focus on. I want you to be able to identify the differences between these tissues. And let me tell you this: if you are a person, you're like, I like this medical stuff, but I hate it when you show me pictures of people's face ripped off. I can't do blood. They're like, but it'd be really fun to like work in medicine, but I also hate people, right? You know, like I don't want to like deal with like, you know, crying babies or like, you know, death or people who are angry. Okay, pathology might be your game, man. And Greta's uncle's a pathologist in Fort Wayne, so they look at these cells, okay, and figure out what's wrong with them. Okay, this kid's got cancer, you know, or okay, here's this virus, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's what a pathologist does. And by the way, you make crap tons of money. This guy, he owns his own pathology practice. We went to his lake house on Lake Wawasee. He had like 2 jet skis that were probably cost more in my van. Okay, tons of boats, like lakefront Wawa Sea, man, not like, you know, on a little, I mean, his house was just massive. Okay, super cool. Awesome dude too. But think about pathology. If you've ever gotten some biopsy before, right? They send it off. They say they're going to send it off to get it checked. That's who it's going to. Okay, so epithelial tissue, and the other class, a bunch of people asked me, and if anybody wants copies of this, you know, I always like to look at my prefixes, my suffixes. If I look up the prefix of epi, E-P-I, okay, it says right here, above, upon, or on. Okay, so it kind of gives you that inkling that this tissue is going to be on top of something else. It also lines the internal organs. Okay, the key is this. It has this basement membrane, and that's attached to some connective tissue. Usually damaged, replaced quickly. Right now, I'm making it rain, okay? This is gross, but I am growing all of my skin cells, unless you're wearing a mask. Unless you're wearing a mask from the moment you get into the moment you leave this room, every single one of you in this room will have inhaled pieces of each other. So like I will inhale pieces of you, you will by the end of this, well probably by the end of the month, will have inhaled pieces of me. Okay? If you've ever sat down on a couch, I mentioned this on Friday, right? Yeah, and you see those dust things coming up. That's cells, that's those dead cells. I'm not crying, I'm not bleeding as I'm making it rain right here, right? I mean that would be crazy, right? But that is a part of it. The way these cells work. Okay? So simple squamous is the first one. Don't write these down.
Okay.
Okay? Because I'm going to give it to you later.
Great.
Okay? Yeah.
I thought all organs were
Internal organ. Well, the skin is the largest organ in the body. It's external. So there you go.
Kind of like a disease.
Look at your eyeball. That's important, right? It's not all internal. Not this part. Yeah. Yeah. You're not going to pass out. Okay, good. All right. Let's take a look at this. Okay. Simple squamous is one of the coolest ones because all of these tissues, by the way, their functions match their structures, or their structures match their functions, okay? So this guy, this simple squamous here, okay, is one in which the cells are not like tightly packed, okay? In fact, there's spaces in between them so that you can simply pass through. Kind of like me as a particle going through this door. I don't have to open up this door. This would be like one cell here. This would be another cell here, and you're like, there's a big gaping thing right here, right? That's horrible. Okay, but you got to remember, we're talking about, you know, it's very small, nano small, right? Okay, so here's how you breathe. Okay, air goes into your mouth or your nose, down through trachea, in your bronchi, in your bronchioles, and then they T-bone into the air sacs called alveoli. Those alveoli are so thin that your oxygen passes from the tiny sac into the capillary that's surrounding that sac. Okay, think about how important that is. You don't want to have this maze for your oxygen to get to your blood, right? You want it to get there quickly, especially when you're running, you know, also doing pretty much anything else. You cut off oxygen in your brain, you're in trouble. Okay? The way the oxygen moves out is all based on pressure. We'll talk about that later. But remember, there's also a gas that moves in, and that gas is carbon dioxide, and it goes from the capillaries to the alveoli, to the bronchioles, to the bronchi, to the trachea, and then out. Okay? Okay, we want a very, very tiny, we don't want that oxygen to have to work at. We want to get it there. So this structure, this simple squamous is perfect for it. Okay, here's the cells. as I said before, every one of these are going to have this basement membrane, and that is a little membrane that connects the cell to another tissue, and that's a connective tissue. Okay, right? But when we're talking about the epithelium, we're just talking about this. Okay, so here's my smartboard thing. Okay, so I'm gonna ask that if you're sketching this out, and you can use colored pencils. Okay, if I was doing this with colored pencils, I might draw the cells with one color. Okay, with the nuclei. Okay, but I'm gonna label that C for cell. Then I'm gonna draw like a little line here like this, and that little line is the basement membrane. Okay, and then I'm just gonna draw something like this. Okay, I could do the whole thing. I'm just doing a section. And so I'm gonna draw just kind of this. Kind of looks like, you know how bacon has that fat and meat together, right? So I always think that this kind of looks like, you know, kind of like bacon. This is the fat part. This is the meat part. Right? You know what? Can you see it? I know it's a stretch, but are you with me? Yeah. And then just put CT there for that. Okay, so C stands for the cell. Okay, C stands for cell. That didn't help you. Here, how about this? BM stands for basement membrane, and then CT stands for connective tissue. Yes, Chris. Basement the line, just the line is the basement membrane. BM is also a bowel movement. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you repeat CT?
Yeah, connective tissue. Connective tissue, yep. And I'm just going to label them like that every time. Okay, cell, basement membrane, connective tissue. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Okay? Any questions? I love my sixth period. It's good to see you guys today. One more day, another day here. Did you hear Butler? Butler's out for 2 weeks. They stay on campus because they're Butler University. They are now online learning. Can you imagine how boring that would be? In your dorm, you can't do anything.